The night was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that makes even the crickets forget to sing. A pale moon hung over the wide Texas plains, silvering the fences and casting long shadows across the barn. Rancher Luke McCall tightened his grip on the lantern, its flickering light trembling against the wooden walls. He could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on him as he approached the old storage shed. Inside, tied to a post, was the stranger he'd found near the creek earlier that evening. Luke hadn't planned to bring anyone home that night. He was heading back after rounding up stray cattle when he spotted movement near the water. At first, he thought it was a coyote, until he saw the figure stumble and fall. The person was dressed in tattered clothes, shivering and covered in mud. He'd called out, but there'd been no reply. When he drew closer, he saw it was a woman, or at least, that's what he thought. She looked wild, almost feral. Her wrists were bruised, and she fought like a cornered animal when he tried to help her. Luke had no choice but to tie her hands with a rope and bring her to the barn until she calmed down. He wasn't proud of it, but she'd left him no other choice. Now, standing before her again, he could see how exhausted she was. Her hair, tangled and dark, fell over her face. Her lips were pale, cracked from the cold. But her eyes, those eyes, were sharp, fearful, and full of something deeper. He lowered the lantern and spoke softly, "Ma'am, I ain't here to hurt you. You were half dead out there. I just want to make sure you're all right." The woman didn't answer. She only stared at him, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling like she'd been running for miles. Luke sighed and set the lantern down. "All right then," he muttered. "Let's get this rope off." As he reached for the knot, she suddenly whispered, "Please, don't judge me." Her voice trembled. It wasn't the voice of a dangerous person. It was broken, pleading, full of shame. Luke froze for a moment, confused. "Judge you, lady? I just found you by the creek. I don't even know who you are." She didn't reply, only turned her face away. Luke hesitated but started untying the rope anyway. The fibers had cut into her skin, leaving angry red marks. "There," he said gently. "You're free now." But when the last loop of rope fell away, she didn't move. She just stood there, shaking, her arms limp by her sides. Then, with a slow, trembling hand, she lifted the hem of her torn coat. Luke's breath caught in his throat. Underneath wasn't what he expected. Not a wound, not shackles, not even a weapon. Instead, he saw a scar running deep across her side, old, jagged, and ugly, like something had torn her apart and barely left her alive. And below that, he noticed something else, a crude tattoo, burned into her skin, marked with letters he recognized instantly, a branding mark. It was the symbol of the Blackridge Gang, a ruthless group of outlaws who'd been terrorizing the region for years. Luke staggered back. You're one of them." Her eyes filled with tears. "I was," she whispered. "But not anymore." He reached for his gun out of instinct, his hand trembling. "You better start explaining, and fast." She sank to her knees, sobbing quietly. "They took me 3 years ago. I was just a maid in a boarding house in Austin. They raided the town, killed everyone who tried to fight. I was taken, forced to help them, to clean, to patch them up after their raids. When I tried to escape, they burned me with their mark." Luke lowered the gun slowly. Her words hit him hard. He'd seen what the Blackridge Gang did to people. They didn't just steal, they destroyed lives. "I ran away last spring," she continued. "Been hiding ever since. Every town I went to, someone recognized the mark. They thought I was one of them. They called me a killer, a liar, a whore. Nobody would believe me." Her shoulders shook as she covered her face. "Please, don't judge me for what they did. I just wanted to live." Luke felt the weight of her words sink deep into his chest. He knew what it was like to lose everything. His wife and son had been killed by raiders years ago. That pain never left him. Maybe that's why he'd stopped trusting people. Maybe that's why he lived alone on this ranch, speaking only to the horses and the wind. He knelt beside her and said quietly, "I believe you." Her eyes widened. "You do. I've seen real evil before," Luke said. "And it don't look like you." The woman stared at him in disbelief. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Why would you help me?" He gave a small, sad smile. "Because maybe it's time someone did." For the first time, she smiled, a faint, trembling smile that seemed to melt the cold air between them. Luke helped her stand, offered her a blanket, and led her into the cabin. The fire crackled as she sat near the hearth, clutching the cup of coffee he poured. Her hands were still shaking, but her eyes had softened. After a long silence, she finally said, "My name's Clara." "Luke," he replied. "Luke McCall." She nodded slowly. "Thank you, Luke McCall, for untying the rope." He met her gaze and said softly, "No rope should hold someone who's already fought their way free." Outside, the wind howled across the plains, carrying with it the ghosts of both their pasts. But inside that small cabin, a fragile peace had begun to grow, one built on mercy, not judgment. That night, as Luke looked out into the dark, he thought of all the people who never got a second chance. And he promised himself that whatever happened next, he'd protect Clara, not because she needed saving, but because she finally deserved to be believed. And as the firelight danced on her face, she whispered again, almost to herself, "Please, don't judge me." Luke turned toward her, voice steady and kind. "Not tonight, Clara, not ever again."